the Instructor podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.
Welcome to the Instructor podcast, Green Room Edition. This is a show that does not advertise it is going to say naughty words. It just says them. As always, I am your mediocre host, Terry Cook. I'm delighted to be here, but you'll be delighted that it's not just me. I am joined by the master and ruler of the world, Chris Benstead. How are we doing, Chris?
Universe, but I'll take it. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you.
No, there was a wrestler that died this week called Sid Justice, and that was his nickname. So that's what I gave you today.
I feel bad. It's not even a week in.
No, I repurposed that nickname to you. But yeah, thank you for joining us today, Chris. As always, this is a show where we do cover all the latest news and hot topics. But today is a listener question special. And I put this plea out for questions in the Instructor Podcast Facebook group. And as always, people did not disappoint. We got some superb questions through because the listeners of this podcast are the most intelligent listeners of any podcast. But we did get one comment in particular, Chris, because I think that me and you have been left unchecked for too long. 41, 42 episodes that we've done. And
No, just Day Rider.
Yes, but we got one comment in particular from the lovely Susan Bates, who reached out and asked if she'd give us some feedback. And Susan turned up our messages with a very lovely, if slightly long, message that was genuinely one of the best critiques I have ever had of anything specific about this show. So we invited Susan on so we could discuss her points.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for coming along today. Do you want to... Well, what I will start off by saying is, first of all, I can promise I will be nice. I cannot promise Chris will be nice, so we'll see how that goes. Do you want to tell us what the points are, what your concerns were, if you like?
Yeah, there was one of your episodes that I listened to, and you were discussing taking students on motorways, PDIs in particular, why were they not allowed? And I think I get confused between the two of you. Hands off, I'm really sorry. You both got beards, you both do podcasts. One of you said that you have liaised with the DVSA over, I think it was you, Chris, over different things. And that potentially there has to be some privilege to being qualified. But it went on, and one of you said that things happen very quickly on motorways, and it's a bit different to being on like a 30-mile-an-hour road where you've got time to adjust the various bits and pieces. And you kind of implied within your talking about why a PDI wouldn't be ready to take people onto the motorways was about the training and the fact that they hadn't done 40 hours and they hadn't done this, that, and the other if they didn't have a pink license. But a lot of people will go that route and still do lots of training. Our nearest dual carriageway is 70 miles an hour. I had no restrictions as a PDI over whether I could take them on the A1 or the A46. And there are complicated junctions on those. There's crossroads, there's turning rights and this, that, and the other. You don't get any of that on a motorway. I would argue that motorways are safer than some of the dual carriageways we have locally, and yet there's no restriction on PDIs taking on the dual carriageways. So the definition between why PDIs can't take a student onto a motorway, don't get me wrong, very few around here take them even onto the dual carriageway, so they don't come on the test route. End of. So I know that for a fact, because I did get a lot of nervous people that I then take onto dual carriageways to encourage them and facilitate. You know, there is a big difference. You see it all the time on Facebook groups about people with the big companies, Bill Plant, Red, whatever, who have their set amount of training. Some of it's 2-to-1, some of it's minimum 25% in car for the 40 hours, which is 10 hours in a car. And you think they're better equipped to do the training with the learners and things.
No, because they're still PDIs.
Yeah, they are still PDIs, but there's a very big difference between what they then take into being ADIs. Obviously, we all have to get to the part 3, but just because I didn't go the pink license route doesn't mean I didn't do copious amounts of training. No way I was going to take people out on the road without any understanding. I did loads of things with Lou, bless her. I did other one-to-one Zooms. I did in-car training. I used the Go Green package and had in-car training to support the theory I was learning from there. And I did every other week with Louise on Sunday night. I had loads of information, some of which when I was in the car with trainers, and I say, oh yeah, but what about this? Oh, not heard of that. Oh, right, okay. So I'm bringing something to you. One of the people that I did some training with, I've seen on Facebook since, she recommends Total Drive to her PDIs now, because I was using it. She hasn't credited me with that, but I know that she had never seen it before I showed it to her.
Welcome to the world of not getting credited for stuff.
I don't care, but, it's going to help other people. But you know what I mean? I'm not looking for credit or praise or anything. I feel there's a very big divergence between the opinion on Facebook groups, for example, of PDIs that are on a pink license and not. And I did actually have a little bit of a contra with, I think it was Graham Hooper, because he said that if you're not on a pink license, you're not a PDI. And I pointed out, well, actually, as soon as you start training and you put your papers in, you're a potential driving instructor. Doesn't matter how far along the line you've gone. And to be honest, if it hadn't been for Lou, I would never have considered myself a PDI because I thought you needed that pink license. And it was one of the trainers that I did in-car stuff with who said, well, why are you going on a pink license? Well, because I'm not earning, I need to earn. Well, we can actually get your part 3 test quicker if you don't go on a pink license.
Some really valid points there, and I think that the two you began with, one was about comparing 30 and 70 zone. That was me, so I'll come back to that later. But the other one was liaising with, I think it was the DVSA on National Highways. One of the other was yourself, Chris. So I'll let you take that first, Chris.
I would start with, I totally agree with everything that you've just said, Susan. Except for the fact, I don't think that's actually what we said, but I appreciate it's what you heard, because you hear these things from a personal position, and your position is one of someone who's put in a lot of work, has taken it seriously, has gone over and above the minimum requirement. So I would say that you probably don't need drink drive laws in place because you're not going to drink drive. So that doesn't mean we shouldn't have them, because we need to cater for the people that don't, follow the rules or don't put the common sense in. And I've been in the industry long enough to see the majority of people that will work to the minimum standard that's set. So when the rules are set, so if we're specifically talking about those motorway rules, and before I go there, I totally agree. PDI is anyone that's on the license. It's a drum that Lou and I both used to beat. The DVSA class it as PDI is someone who's there. It's whether you've got a trainee license is a separate thing, but the industry tends to use this PDI phrase for anyone that's got a pink badge. And I think there's you can do the job. Am I right in saying this? I think you've made me question what and how I word it. This is the thing, which I love. And as Terry said, both of us really appreciate it. Yeah. So I think you can do a better job without the pink badge, if you choose to, than someone who's got the pink badge but is only doing the minimum, following the steps that they're given, that don't go above and beyond. And I absolutely accept that. But when you're putting the rules in place, especially with changes like the motorway changes, which has taken, I think people don't appreciate, we're looking at probably 30 years plus to get that coming through. That's when it first, was being addressed. There's got to be some kind of ruling put in place as to who can and who can't. And that's why that was put in place.
That is one of the things I'm saying. There is no restriction on a PDI taking students on a 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway that have junctions coming from the left and the right and crossroads on, and yet there are restrictions on a motorway which is safer.
But the dual carriageway, they were always able.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but there wasn't a need for a change. So to get the change through, There was no way they were going to allow it if they allowed trainees on the motorway as well. So it was a case of getting the change through. We either had it for just ADIs or we had it for nobody. So which would you rather? It doesn't have to make sense. You don't have to necessarily think that, you know, that restriction is necessary. I think it is, because I get people who would do it on someone's first lesson.
I can agree with there needing to be a restriction. It's the fact that there is no restriction on anybody taking anyone on a 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway.
So are you saying there should be a restriction on the 70-mile-an-hour dual carriageway?
If the reason there's a restriction is because they're fast-paced and things happen quickly, both, then they're happening quickly on a dual carriageway at 70 miles an hour as well. And there's more to take in. There's not safety places to pull off all the time if your car breaks down or you have a panic attack or something. Mm-hmm. If a student gets overwhelmed, if they don't process what's coming up, you've still got to interact. You've still got to be on your high alert all the while. I just think, and okay, they're not going to undo the fact that PDIs can go on dual carriageways, but some of them are more, you know, Ireland has a restriction when they pass the driving test of the speed limit. Maybe there should be a speed limit on PDIs when training until they've proven they've done so many hours or something.
So I think that the situation that we've got wasn't about putting restrictions in, it was about removing a restriction. And so we're having the same conversation from opposite sides of the fence, because I'm talking about the removal of a restriction. And to get that removal of a restriction in, there is no way that National Highways England at the time, were going to allow trainees to go on motorways. And I was in a room where somebody raised the fact that, you know, on the L test, it's still inside of the legislation that they would be allowed to take learners on motorways in the future, to which point Highways England's boss said very definitely it's not going to happen. So it's a compromise, and I think it's the right compromise. I also think that there is, you know, that there's a danger that's caused by inequipped PDIs. So not the equipped ones, not the ones that put the good thought, common sense in and you know, play it safe. The ones that take the risks, there's a problem there. Now, I would say the same about new drivers. So if we look at new drivers, I'm all for graduated driving licensing and putting in restrictions, you know, but that's a different conversation. So, you know, to kind of acknowledge those things that you've said, I have no issue with people who don't got a pink badge, as long as they've done it from an informed reason, and as long as they put the work in, which I think you tick both of those boxes. So, you know, I absolutely. I would say the same about people who go on a pink badge. Do it not for the wrong reasons. Do it, you know, because it's informed and it's going to work for you. You know, I turned around this week and said to someone, don't go on a pink badge, don't go with a franchise, because it's not right for the model that the restrictions you've got in your life. It's not going to work. And everyone else had told him, yeah, do this, because they want to, you know, sign him up and get a nice contract in place. We need to do things for the individual in the right way, in the same way we need to do things for society and for the collective in the right way as well.
Anything you want to come back on there, Susan?
No, what you're saying makes sense. I suppose it's just because obviously I've come into it after the motorway thing was alleviated. I mean, I can remember going on the motorway to go to my grandma's and like great big sign at the start saying no L drivers and all this, that, you know, all horse-drawn carriages and all that stuff. They haven't let the horses on yet, have they? So yeah, I mean, I do get it, and the fact that you've got it through with a restriction is better than not having it at all. I do understand that. Yeah, maybe I did go back when I was making my notes. I did listen to the whole thing again to think, have I heard it wrong? And that was the take I took on it, and so I'm sure other people would have done. So yeah. It was okay for PDIs at 30 miles an hour to make mistakes, but not at 70. But actually, we can say I'm not anymore. could still go at 70 on dual carriageway. That's the thing. Yeah. But
So
you brought something else up, graduated licenses. Yeah. What happened with the trial that was supposed to be started?
This is the same as the motorway situation. You get used to it. It goes around. They think it's a good idea politically, and then it disappears, and then it comes back around after they need to cover something else up with a bit of good news, or at the moment, isn't it? Anyone over the age of 60 is going to need to be retested. I won't hold my breath.
yeah.
So
How does that work with AGIs that are approaching or over 60?
Oh, they just get thrown over the cliff. It's Logan's Run, isn't it?
See you then. Bye.
I want to touch back on that briefly because I'm going to explain a little bit how the sausage is made here, because there's some things that people don't necessarily see. So, Chris, you mentioned there was a mention there as well that what was said may have come across a certain way, and here you go. Here's how the sausage is made. So when I'm hosting these episodes, believe it or not, there's actually some thought that goes into it. There's actually an element of structure, especially, again, believe it or not, in the Greener episodes, there's actually more structure in this. So part of what I do is keep the show rolling along, because while I may put the structure in, Chris just sits there and talks when I let him. So in that specific instance, when Chris answered the question and I listened back to that, I thought, yes, I can understand how it was construed that way. Usually what I would do is I would ask Chris to clarify or ask a follow-up question, because it sends little alarm bells going, thinking, oh, that was a bit spicy. I'm just going to give you the opportunity just to potentially rephrase it. And for whatever reason, I didn't on that one. And it's interesting because I've got quite a good batting average when it comes to stuff like that. But every now and again, I'll get someone that messages me and says, oh, can't believe he didn't pull them up for this thing. Can't believe he let him get away with this. And it's like, sometimes I have to decide what hill I die on. And it's like the whole of an episode can't be defined or shouldn't be defined by one part. I'm not saying you did this, by the way, Susan. You didn't, 'cause the feedback you're giving us. But sometimes that's how people take it. I'll get messages and they'll pick up one thing and they'll be like, text after text after text complaining about it. And then I'll ask them what they thought of the episode. They say, oh, it was great. I'm like, oh, hold on. Right. Well, chip in with that as well. I thought you thought it was rubbish. But yeah, I've got quite a good batting average, but that was one I missed. And the other thing, and I think this is where the perfect storm comes in, is that I was actually at the point I was kind of moving it along. So when you said there about the 30 and 70 thing, that was me wrapping up that conversation to move on. And then when I listen back, I'm like, yeah, that was too flippant a comment on my part. But that's me just comparing 30 and 70s almost to go, right, okay, here's a quick point. Let's move on to this. So listening back, it was like, yeah, that's one I got wrong. I'll hold my hands up and say that was a poor, if I'm being honest, a poor podcasting call from me more than anything else. So, yeah, a little bit of how the sausage is made there. Expect more of them tonight, I would say. So is there anything else you want to touch on there, Susan, before we move on?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming on. I said it at the start of the show, I loved the message you sent through. It was just such a wonderful critique, because there were some nice bits in there as well. And that's kind of where I'm comparing it with. I even said to you, if you talk to your learners like that, you'll be well aware, because that was like proper feedback. And I love that. And I love that you've come on to almost hold us to account a little bit as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. So yeah, Chris, we with Susan there. Just how did that feel? Someone holding us to account in a nice way for a change.
Yeah, no, it's always nice. I think you and I can both be sensitive to feedback, especially initially when you first read it. And it is that thing. I think that all good instructors get good at reflecting and going, did I do a good job? Did I do the right job? And especially when you say something in the moment, it takes me back to my part 3, and standards checks as well. It's that thing of when we do this, I don't think we've ever really edited what we've said. You edit the podcast, but it normally, what we said is what goes out. It's very rare that we suddenly go, oh, do you know what? So it's off the cuff and it's off the dome, as Harry Mack would say. I'm still fairly comfortable with what I said, but I might say it differently if I said it again. And I would definitely, and in the future will definitely, clarify PDI, as to exactly what we're talking about, and the fact that I class PDI as anyone who's on the register.
I've taken out a couple of things I've said in the past because I do have the habit of going, if you hear me pause in a podcast, pause and then say, probably shouldn't say this. There's a chance that that's come out because that's why I leave the pause. So, it's where the people that come along to watch live get to see how the sausage is made.
It's who's in control of the note taking in a meeting, isn't it? Is the one that gets to say what was said, and that's you and the podcast. So I have no power. I just turn up and hope for the best.
I've said this before, and I'll say it again. My whole thing for this podcast is I want the guests to look good. And I must admit, when Susan pointed out to me today, and I listened back, I'm like, yeah, I haven't done my job properly there. But, and this is me giving myself a little bit of credit, I've just criticised myself, so I'll reinforce a bit of self-praise. I generally do a good job. And I think that, screw it, most people don't. Most people don't go into recording episodes with that mentality. And I think that's why I'm relatively successful at what I do. So there you go, whatever. But no, genuinely appreciate that. And it made it a nice, interesting change. What I will say is anyone that doesn't like what we're doing, you're not all going to now get to come on and slag us up on the show. That's not what we're doing going forward. But I will just say, shout out to David Legg, who he's got a question later on, actually. But he is someone that massively holds me to account in the premium membership. Every episode that goes out, it's like, what about this? What about it's brilliant. I love it. And also to Gareth Marchant, who's regularly holding me to account on the public stuff. So I've got two people there who keep me on my toes in a good way. That's meant in a positive. But as I said, today is a listener question special. I think I phrased it right. But there's a couple of bit of news I want to cover first, because the DVSA today have sent out their email with the announcement that there's going to be another survey, and it's going to be on the 1st September. So this episode goes out on the last day in October. I'm not committing to a date. I can't remember. I'm not doing the poem. But their survey goes out on the 1st September. So, Chris, I am usually a very positive person. I'm also one of the more forgiving people of the DVSA, something I get criticised for as well. However, I am of the mindset I can't be bothered filling in this survey because the last one I filled in, they just went and said we're going to do the opposite of what you said anyway. So tell me why I should fill in this survey.
I'm firstly struggling with the fact that you didn't know how many days are in the month that has Halloween at the end of it.
No, I know how many days are in September. It's how many days are in August, I don't.
No, I thought you said October.
No, the 1st of September.
You're not?
The 1st of September.
Okay. That's fine.
There's a strong possibility.
Got it wrong. And I was going, Terry knows that one. Anyway, sorry. You can cut that bit. There you go.
No, that's the promo clip.
At least if you fill in the survey, you know what the result's going to be before they publish it, because it's predetermined, and you'll have a vague idea of what's going to be coming out next, and then it'll all get shelved and nothing will change. It's always how I feel. Should we do it? 100%, because otherwise we lose the right to. It's like voting when there's no one good to vote for. You kind of have to pick someone. Yes, we should all fill in the survey. We should have record numbers filling in the survey, but it's really tempting to write some rude word across it so that they know that we don't really mean it. But there'll be good intent behind it somewhere. I'm feeling cynical when it comes to surveys.
Yes, you haven't convinced me, but either way, 1st September, that survey comes out. I can't remember the cutoff date, but if you feel like you want to read it, and then if you feel like you want to answer the question while you're reading it, go and do it. You can tell my enthusiasm for that is waning. I also think it's relevant that we mention the Intelligent Instructor and ADI NJC Expo, which is out at the end of September, which is on at the end of September. Chris, you're speaking there. What time are you speaking? What stage are you on?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure. I haven't. I don't believe I've had that information through yet. But I am speaking, and I finally got really excited about doing so because I'm doing something a bit different to what I thought I was going to do, which I wasn't feeling as excited about because theory's awesome. I love it, but I promised something different. It is different. So if you're there, come and have a listen.
Yes, he gave me not a sneak peek, but an idea of what you're talking about. And I don't know if I'd recommend people go or not. I'm not going to
It'll
lie.
be awesome.
Is there anyone in particular that you've seen that stands out for this year, or?
No, but I think that's more that I haven't really seen what's going on. I committed to it because I knew that I'd be post having a baby and all of that stuff happening. At the moment, I'm still kind of caught up in that world, so I'm slightly out of touch of who's going to be there. Nothing's jumped out at me, if I'm honest. But I know that they have asked everybody to try and think outside the box in any presentation that they're doing to be a bit different from what's been done before. So hopefully, those that are will step up and deliver.
What if I told you that a friend of the show and friend of ours, Emma Cottington, was presenting at 9 a.m.?
I'd be there at 9 a.m. to listen.
Emma Cottington is presenting at 9 a.m. So there you go. You've got one to look forward to already. What I will say, I'm going to mention this because last year there were some complaints around the main stage aspect. The volume around that in the main stage was really loud. So when you were near it, you couldn't hear anything else, but then you also couldn't hear what was being said on the main stage. So they built out, not built, but they repurposed it into a surrounding building that you can walk to, apparently. And yes, I haven't been told off for this yet, so I'm going to keep doing this until someone tells me off, and I will be told off at some point for this. That main stage, I am encouraging people to rename it the Instructor Premium stage, as everyone that appears that is on there is currently a regular contributor to the Instructor Premium, like Sir Bob Morton, Ray Seagrave, and Tom Stenson. Now, if you really want to get in my good books, and really want to annoy Richard Stars, I am definitely going to get told off for this. When you go down there and you see Richard Stars, ask him where the Instructor Premium stage is. That will make my day. So, yeah, please do that when you go down there. And if that's the only reason you go, then great. But yeah, we'll hopefully get 1,000 people this year. Whether or not I turn up, still up for debate. So, but as I said, don't let that put you off. But should be a grand day had by all. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
No, I'm looking forward to it. I feel I've almost had a hiatus from being in touch with stuff, which I know doesn't help when I'm sat here with you. But yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a great day. And if anyone sees me and wants to come and say hello, please say who you are. Ignore Terry's instructions not to, because I'm rubbish with names and it's just embarrassing. I don't like it. So even if you think I know who you are, just tell me, and then I don't have to feel stupid.
My news correspondence hasn't been up to date with the news. But yeah, we're going to come back with listener questions. But do you want to take a moment just to set the table, remind people who you are, what you have to offer, and where they can find you? Why, in fact, you are the master and ruler of the world.
My name's Chris Benstead, and I am a theory test specialist with Theory Test Explained. And I co-founded the DITC, the Driving Instructor and Trainers Collective, the signposting platform for the driving instructor industry. I like to know what's going on, contrary to previous comments, and I normally know where to point people. And if I don't, then I ask Terry.
And you are listening to the Instructor Podcast Green Room Edition. The Instructor Podcast will be back soon, possibly sooner than you think, with another season. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you click subscribe wherever you're listening. And for more Instructor Podcast goodness, head over to www.theinstructorpodcast.com. Where you can find all the stuff that's going on, including all the other podcasts I do and the premium membership, where there is currently a week's free trial. So you can sign up for a week, consume up to, I think there's like 150 hours or something now of content over there. So squeeze that in a week and then leave. And you've got 150 hours worth of training for free. So, yeah, there you go, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. But I put a plea out to my listeners or members in the Instructor Podcast Facebook group. There's a lot of groups. I've trouble to keep track of all this stuff. I should simplify this. But I put that plea out and we got some amazing questions. Like I said at the start, I think that we have the most intelligent listeners that ask some excellent questions. So I have got them all here. Now, I don't think I'm going to get through all these today, Chris, because there's some deep ones. So we may have to roll some of these over into next month. And I haven't saved them in order because I think I'd said it's the most relevant than oldest. So these are in a random order. So the first and possibly most challenging question that we've got was by a one Christ Bensteed, who asked, when was the last time you felt awesome? So I answered that one actually in the group, and the answer was Monday. We're recording this on Thursday. That has now changed. I last felt awesome on Wednesday. So yesterday I last felt awesome, Chris. So same question to you, Chris. When was the last time you felt awesome?
Mine was Tuesday.
Okay, cool. Right, let's move on. Next question is from Philip Cowley. And Philip Cowley, I'm not going to say where he's from because I've given him enough plugs recently. But Philip asks, off the back of your episode with Emma, where you described controlling the controllable, what are you guys controlling at the moment, or what would you advise instructors to be focusing on? So Phil's referring to a premium episode I did with Emma Cottington around resilience. 90 minutes long, almost, and easily, no offense, Chris, one of the best episodes I've ever recorded. And yeah, just awesome. Emma is awesome, as we've already discussed at the Expo. Go and check her out. But I'll touch on this one first, I think, Chris, because I record that episode of Emma, and I think that the thing that is I'm controlling the most at the minute, and it doesn't change, to be fair, it's my time. But it's changed a bit. So, for example, the last couple of weeks, my anxiety has been through the roof for a whole host of different reasons. So by controlling my time, I'm able to help manage that. Do you know what? I wasn't going to say this today, but screw it. In the interests of transparency, honesty, and showing vulnerability, about an hour before this podcast, I had a full-blown panic attack. Not had one for a couple of years, but had one about an hour before this podcast. It's just been one of those weeks. But it's controlling my time that enables me to control this sort of stuff. So my mornings, I don't do a lesson, or rarely do a lesson before 10 a.m. because I like my mornings. It's going out for walks, it's doing some yoga, it's doing some podcast stuff, it's reading, it's all this kind of stuff. But at the minute, that's out the window because I need to control that to make sure I'm set for my day, because I've got kids with a driving test coming up. I can't let what's going on with me affect their driving test. So my mornings are now built to get me ready for those first lessons. So then when I come home from my lessons, I then have to spend a couple of hours regrouping, and then it's getting to 8 o'clock, and then I'm ready to go and do more podcast stuff and catch everyone else. So it's just completely shifted around the way I work. So I think that that's probably the biggest thing that I'm controlling at the minute, and I'm having to do it more because of the situation I've just described. But I think that that's my biggest control. And in terms of what instructors should be focusing on, it's going to vary from person to person, I think. So I would strongly say that you work out what you need to focus on. It's going to be different for each individual. You may need to take a break, for example, from all I'm not calling it anymore, from all training and development. You may need to take a break from that for a month. You may be in a position where you need to do 10 minutes a day. You may be in a position where you want to do one full thing a week or whatever. Maybe you're in a position where you need to focus on your lessons, or maybe you need to focus on your home life. Doesn't matter. You need to focus on the thing that looks after you, because the better condition you're in, i.e. me looking after my time now, means that I'm able to come and do this thing. Whereas if I wasn't managing my time, then I wouldn't be able to come and do this. So I think focusing on yourself. Chris, do you want me to repeat the question, or are you okay just answering that?
No, I'm good. The thing that I'm controlling most at the moment is my time. But I think time is the thing that we struggle with the most, especially when we sell it. So, the very fact that, you've got to be achieving a certain amount of things. We've got costs, we've got, we need to be making enough money, and all of those factors. You can't get it back once it's gone. So it's one of the biggest problems with the job of driving instructing, and the fact that you sell time. So trying to control that has always been the number one thing. making it work and work the way that you want. But I've been trying to control in a positive way the amount of time that I'm not working. So I've been trying to make sure that during the school holidays, actually I've had a day off during the week where, I could then go and spend the time with the family as well, and we could go and do something. And, just trying to make sure that while those opportunities are there, that, that I'm able to keep everything on a nice even keel and not end up with overwhelm and, struggling mentally myself with the amount of stuff going on. And I live in a world of mental turmoil, because it's how my brain works on a good day, and it doesn't work on a bad day. So I know that I have to manage that. I need to be on top of it all the time. And I agree. When it comes to instructors, what you need to control starts with knowing what you need, because that's going to dictate what it is. The one thing everybody has control over is their breathing. And I think that's where I always start with people, because if you feel that you haven't got control in some way, that's the starting place. And then from there, we can work forwards and figure out, is it something you need to take control of? Is it something you can give control away of outsourcing it, getting someone else to do it? And just because everybody else on social media says that you're wrong, it doesn't mean you are. So, control social media, turn it off. And I've got better at that because of Mr. Cook.
Well, people regularly tell you you're wrong on social media.
Yeah, but I accept it and just move on.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. This is from Les Hopkinson, who I'm presuming, despite being in the chat, won't be coming on to read this question himself. So I will read it on his behalf. Do longer waiting times really matter, aside from the effect it has on learners' pockets? Often we say that learners should spend longer learning to drive, gain more experience in the learning environment, and not rush through the learning process. It's been talked about that there should be a minimum learning period / amount of hours. We have some people taking the test with very little learning and fluke the test. Surely the longer wait times have a positive impact on post-test standard of driving if they're almost forced to learn for longer. So we were going to talk about the driving test waiting times today, but then when I saw this question, I thought it ties in nicely. So do you want to respond to this, Chris?
Yes, I absolutely agree. If everybody passed first time, I think when the waiting times hit as a problem is when you've got someone who doesn't pass, but the unfortunate don't pass is not they weren't ready, because actually they shouldn't have been going in the first place. So when you get someone who doesn't pass, and then there's going to be an excessively long amount of time before they can retake it, whereas if they could take it in 2 weeks, they'd have been fine. That's when the problems come in. And then on top of that, you've got public panic, which, I don't think helps any of us, because we end up firefighting rather than doing the job. And that's when you have to control it. So that links in with the previous stuff of you need to make sure that from the beginning, expectations are being controlled so that you can, as Les quite rightly said, you can benefit from that longer waiting time. From my world of theory training, it puts a lot of pressure on people that struggle with theory to get it done, because then it's going to extend things even further on practical. And the number of people that are, air quotes, test ready, but can't pass the theory, that then that stress and pressure doesn't help. And then they're less likely to pass, and then you end up with that big cycle. So there's pros and cons in there, but I agree with Les's point that actually we want them having more hours. That we know that's what makes them safer. So in doing that, if you can manage it well, there's a massive benefit, not just to the learner, but to society, because we get safer drivers on the road.
I think that I agree. I think the key point you raised was about the public panic, because now I know you're not a fan of the idea of minimum number of hours and stuff like that, but let's imagine for a second there was a minimum learning period of 6 months. So when you started your process to learn to drive, you had to wait 6 months before you booked a test. Not because there was a waiting list, because you're not allowed to book it longer. Your approach would likely be different if the reason you can't get an early test is because there's a waiting list. Because if there's a waiting list, you're likely to be then looking for cancellations and stuff. And I think that builds up a different pressure as well. And because it's like that, like you said, that's where the public panic can come from. And I think that part of the problem there is that someone like Les, and I don't think I'm wrong when I say this, Les attracts good learners. And we've got a question about this further down, actually, that ties in with this, but Les attracts good learners, to my understanding, mostly. Well, that's because of the content that Les puts out and the way Les promotes himself. Les has never, or at least recently, in the recent past, promoted himself as a quick fix. Come with me, let's pass your test as quick as we can and you'll be on your way. He's never done that. He promotes himself very differently. And a lot of instructors will do that. So they will get this certain type of learner that are happy to use it to the advantage. The problem is the people that don't have that mindset. And a lot of those will be the private learners, the people that learn with mum and dad or whatever. And they're going to see that very differently. And they're the ones that don't care and will be paying 200 quid a time for a test and then failing that test and then feeding that profiteering that goes with it as well. So I think that in principle, we can use it to this positivity. But I think in the big picture, it does create, in my opinion at least, and again, please share your thoughts, Chris, but I think it does, in the big picture of things over the grand scheme, probably have a more detrimental effect in the ways I've suggested.
Yeah, no, I think all of those things happen. And that's probably where the biggest criticism of the DVSA comes from. Is it's not so much the problem, the actual waiting list itself. It's the framing of it. It's all of those things. And so yeah, no, absolutely. And there's always going to be pros and cons. And what I would like to acknowledge again is how driving instructors have been the biggest solution to the waiting list problem, and probably not appreciated enough for it, because actually, they're taking the brunt of it on the front line, managing it in lots of different ways, but just trying to, that reassurance and everything else when the panic's going on. They've been, as a majority, a calm voice saying, well, let's work the problem. Let's figure out how we A, make it work for us, and B, we manage it to have the least impact. So, and some of that not selfish. Some of that is, it is because of their own stats. All of that tip system, which arguably the DVSA could take as a win of their own, because that's what it's there for. But whether it's targeting the right people, there's still those that will happily just pick up whoever at the side of the road and take them down the test centre. The people who are worried are often the ones that shouldn't be. So there's lots of those kind of factors. I just think, I champion driving instructors, ADIs and PDIs, whether they're on a badge or not. Absolutely, I think that should be acknowledged, and that there should be more support there and more guidance for what is and is not acceptable or recommended. Best practice is something we are not good at in our industry, and we should be better.
Early on in that statement, you referred to the majority of driving instructors being the calming voice and helping this situation. Is it the majority of driving instructors, do you believe?
Yes, because I don't think they've got there's nothing else you can do. We can blame the DVSA. We can play that game. But actually, when you've got that individual in front of you, you've just got to go through design. We'll sort it for you. Otherwise, they're going elsewhere anyway. So yes, it's one of the few occasions that I'll use the majority. But I'd like to think that I can be confident in that.
Interesting. I would say the majority of driving instructors are helping solve the situation inadvertently. and there's a select group that are helping solve the situation consciously and in a positive fashion.
So I might be slightly skewed in my view of it, because across the local area, and set up by myself, we've got WhatsApp groups for every single test centre in southeast London and the majority of Kent. And inside of those, all the local instructors that are on those, and they're the ones I have contact with, are actively supporting each other in exchanging tests and making things work. So that lens that I see the local ADI community through is possibly better resourced than other areas in the country, maybe, where people aren't working together as much. And I know it is happening in other areas, absolutely. I know some driving schools, small driving schools, that are saying to the local independent instructors, effectively, club in with us and we'll do it through our OBS, because then we can all work together in juggling tests around.
I'll be honest, I wasn't thinking of it from that point of view, and that's a really good point. What I would add in there for me on a personal level, I can't do groups, WhatsApp groups. It's why I've got a WhatsApp page for the instructor rather than the group. I can't deal with all that nonsense. I know it's done in my area, but it's not done to that extent. And like you said, it'll be different around the country, but I was more thinking of like an individual basis in car. So the instructors that have used this opportunity to do what Les spoke about and provide that further training, and you go, okay, well, you're testing for 2 months. What else can we do to get even better prepared in the meantime? So I think I was more thinking of that individual view. So I think you're right in what you say there, actually. So yeah, there's a few different schools of thought there, and it's interesting. It's really interesting. But I agree with you. I think that instructors are playing a part, probably a bigger part than anyone else, whether it's inadvertent or intentional. And yeah. I'm more thinking, as I say, from that perspective of the instructors that are, how can we make you better? That kind of it. So yeah, I think there's a couple of different things in play there. But for anyone that is listening that maybe is thinking what they can do differently, or how can they help manage this system, or even they can help manage their own diary and students better, what advice would you give to those instructors, Chris?
Start at the beginning and act as if. So if you talk as if all of your pupils do whatever you think is the best approach, because we're not all going to agree on that, but have a positive approach which is going to manage expectations and understanding, engage with all the players. So if you're dealing with pupils who have parents that are part of the process, then deal with the parents as well, or partners who are part of the process, or whatever your dynamic is, work with that to manage the expectations from the very beginning, because we know it's a problem. Don't ignore it until suddenly it bites us in the backside. And say managing that as you go is really important, and acting as if I did that when I was out in the car. I wanted my pupils. I don't care about the driving test, so I didn't want the test to be the end of the journey. So I acted as if all of my pupils continued to have lessons. So we'd have the test and it'd be, what are we going to do next week? And they'd be, what are you saying, I'm not going to pass? I'm like, well, no, all of my pupils then have some more lessons and we deal with them as a full license holder. They might take a couple of weeks off and then come back, or we book something in. And I acted as if that was the case, and they started booking and doing it, and that's what we did. So sometimes we are the limiting belief. So don't be the limiting belief.
I have a student, and might have these dates slightly wrong, but I think next Friday, we've got a 4-hour motorway lesson. And then she had a test booked in for the following week. She's messaged me today saying, I found the cancellation and rebooked. Hope that's okay. And it's for the day before a 4-hour motorway lesson, which I'm actually free for. And she's more than ready now. There's no concerns there. And so I'm like, yeah, actually, you've got lucky there. I am. Don't know why you've done that, moved it forward like a week or whatever. But she replied back straight and says, we're still doing the motorway lesson next day, right? And I'm like, that's what we want to get across. Now, again, I think, I don't know if this is a later question or what, but not every student will be like that. Mm-hmm. But we have to get them as far along as we can. And I think that I would agree with everything you've said, which I don't always like doing, but I would agree with everything you've said. And, just look for things the way you can make them the best. And like you said, talk to them in the beginning, but keep talking about it. Keep talking about it. And there's nothing wrong with bringing the test forward if they're ready. There's nothing wrong with putting it back if they're not. But it's making the most of that time as best you can. But we might touch back on that a little bit later on because there's another question around that. Anything else you want to touch in relation to that question, Chris?
And no, I would just refer to what you said about Les's pupils, and he gets good pupils because he has a good culture. So actually, it's not about that one pupil. You will get that one pupil who doesn't fit your culture. That's fine. But if you have a good culture, you're going to develop more and more pupils until you end up not having that one pupil that doesn't fit the culture because you filter them through. They don't get attracted to what you offer. So, I think play the long game, have what have a really strong ethos and represent what you want to do. And a lot of those issues will sort themselves out because you'll have those pupils who say, yes, I'm going to do my test, but actually I value what we've already planned. Nothing's changing. It's not about the test. It's about my driving.
Let's move on to the next question then. And before I ask this question, I'm going to touch on to a recent episode of the Instructor podcast, which I'm guessing you haven't listened to because you no longer listen to the Instructor podcast, Chris. It's the one with Lynn Barry. Did you catch this one?
I've downloaded it.
Right.
It's not that I don't listen to the Instructor podcast. I just want to be clear. I don't listen to any podcasts at the moment because I don't have capacity and my head will explode. But I have a long list of them that I will be listening to, and that is one of them.
You've ruined my teasing comment, but I will continue to make it anyway. So Lynn Barry was on. I've started a new kind of collection of episodes where I'm talking to different associations, including local associations, not just national ones. So if you are a member of a local association and you want to come on and talk about your local problems, your local community, and more importantly, how you're solving them, then please reach out because so far, no one has, which is interesting because we had quite a few people asking me to do it, but whatever. I did speak to Lynn Barry from the ADI NJC and I did challenge her on some stuff, in particular around them challenging the DVSA. One of my favourite questions was asking her, who does the ADI NJC represent, the instructor industry or the members? So some really good questions that she answered well. The one she wasn't keen to answer, although she did, but she didn't particularly want to talk about it, was the apps. Because the DVSA recently come out and made a song and dance about how we shouldn't be letting our student use the apps. Even though it's not illegal, we shouldn't be letting them doing it. And the ADI NJC supported that, sharing that message. And I asked Lynn Barry about what's the problem with using the apps. And that was the one thing she wasn't keen to answer. So I'm going to read this question in response to that. And this is from David Legg, the guy who keeps me on my toes in the premium membership. And that's www.instructorpodcast.com for anyone listening. And it's this. I'm going to ask the DVSA at the Expo this, but I'd like your opinions. If apps like driving test cancellations for all are so evil, how do they expect us to run a business? Are we really expecting customers to wait until 80% ready and then book a test, knowing that they then face a 4 to 6 month wait? Does the DVSA really think that customers are going to continue to have lessons every week or every 2 weeks for all that time? I tell my people on the first lesson to book the theory test, and as soon as you pass, we then book the practical. When they go 80% ready, we jump on the cancellation apps. Am I really a bad as well as cynical person? So just a couple of comments. We won't touch back on the whole waiting period and what we can do with stuff. We've just covered that. So just regarding the apps, first of all, you are not a bad person, David. Definitely not. You are a cynical person. So, Chris, do you want to cover this first? The apps, what is it evil to use them? Is the DVSA right to tell us not to let our students use them? Is the ADI NJC right to back that?
As president of the Cynical Persons Club, firstly, I'll refer back to Loveday Ryder standing in front of a room full of driving instructors saying that actually, while apps provide a service that the DVSA cannot, then she fully supports them. She seems to have forgotten that was said, and the DVSA are ignoring it. So that was, I was there. I'm fairly confident I didn't dream it. I think everybody is entitled to an opinion, but they don't mean anything. The DVSA's opinion is that apps are causing a problem because actually they're exploiting a problem, and the problem is the DVSAs. So if they give you a solution, use them. Go for it. Fill your boots. I have no issue with tests being sold for £200 because one of the solutions is that people keep saying, put the price of the test up. Well, that's what's happening. It's just that the DVSA aren't changing anything. So the commercial world is doing the same thing. So you can either join the queue or you can pay to be at the front of it. And that's the world we live in. And fine. Because I can't do anything about it. Again, we'll control what we can control. Someone's going to do that. When there was a toilet roll shortage during COVID, which shouldn't have been a shortage, it shouldn't have been a problem, but it was. Again, the same thing. Profiteering happens, but actually it's almost a necessary thing. It's not to say I like it. I just accept that there's this case. And if someone, assumedly the DVSA, would like to provide me a better solution, then go for it. Absolutely. And there are some better solutions on the short term, but it doesn't work very well for people who are independents unless you get together with other independents to do it. In that, if you're using the OBS system, the online booking system, so you can book for your pupils, and it's a lot easier to use than the public booking system, then you've got flexibility in there and you can actually actively juggle around and you can make use of it. So there are solutions out there. Apps are one of them. And I'm yet to see what's evil about them. What they're doing is highlighting a big problem that is the problem. It's not us. It's not our problem. We're suffering because of it. The problem is the DVSAs. And what they need to do is to fix that, not complain about the fact that, that there's other things because of it. Because if we all stop using the apps, it doesn't make the world a better place, as far as I can see.
I recorded an episode with Dan Hill recently, My Dan Time, the name that I'm sure you're a big fan of, Chris. And he was talking about the supply and demand, basically. And it's available to everyone to watch, by the way. It is on the Instructor Podcast Premium, but it is available for anyone to watch. So you can head over there and find that video and watch that. And he's talking about the increase of lesson prices and, with the demand for lessons going up. And it's the same with this. If someone's willing to, as long as people are willing to pay £200 for a driving test, people will sell driving tests for £200. So as you said, or I think you said, I don't like that. In fact, I massively dislike it. I am on a moral level against profiteering. But what is it at its core? What is it at its core? It's entrepreneurship. It's someone going, there's a problem, there's a gap in the market, I'm going to fill it. In terms of students, are we really going to be asking students that what they need to do is get up at 6 o'clock every Monday morning and fight everyone else, try and book a test? Or are we going to say, get this app that, I don't know, costs you 15 quid for a month or whatever it is, and then that will make your life easier and be able to move the test around quite comfortably?
Yeah, absolutely. And the things about that, firstly, why is it still 6 a.m? Why don't we recognise that? Because the reason it's still 6 a.m. is because then less people will do it. If we make it 10 o'clock, then it's easier. So they're making it difficult because it benefits them. So when it suits, there's this control, this ability to do something, and we know that that's just the new ones coming out. And actually, the sweet spot are when you catch the overtime being put on or things like that. And if you've got a good relationship with your local test centre manager, shout out to our one. I won't name her because she might get in trouble. But when they give you a heads up and say there's tests coming out today, go on there if you need them. It's manageable if you've got those things in place, a good system in place. I would also just mention that again. I don't think I dreamt it. DVSA were offered a free app cancellation system where they could have had it and they could have used it and given it to all instructors and pupils for free, and then it would have stopped people charging money, excessive money for those. And the answer was no. So, sometimes you have to take what's been offered to you. Otherwise you end up like the person who drowned because you kept saying God will save me, and God says I sent you a boat and 2 helicopters. You didn't get on them.
So, David Legg, not a bad person, but possibly cynical. Cy Watts, I like this question from Cy Watts. Is there anything that is usually not taught but you think would benefit being added to a syllabus? Now, before I answer that question, before I let you answer, Chris, I'm going to touch on with one point here, and I'm going to dangle a carrot, shall we say, because I'm not going to answer this question because I have a little project in the works at the minute, which I think is going to be kind of fun and interesting, that hopefully I'll get out in September, that hopefully we can talk about on next month's Expo. And it's related to this very topic, so I don't want to answer it. So I will throw it over to you, Chris. Anything that's not usually taught but could be added to a syllabus?
All the roads that aren't on test routes. I think that it's really difficult as an instructor who, often has a reputation of being outside the box in the things that I'll teach, or if there's a problem, I tend to, take a different approach to. I find that really difficult because I don't know what other people teach. So this is one of the few questions I read before today, and I was struggling with because I think, it's the things that I think of as standard. So I love an Amazon delivery driver lesson, which is where you give them a set of addresses and they've got to find the house in the road, pull up somewhere safe and legal to then, drop off an imaginary package. I don't make them knock on the door because that would be weird. But, drop off the imaginary package and then carry on, because there's a massive set of skills in there. So I think if we could increase the percentage of the training that you deliver that is real life versus new skill training. So anything that fits that box. So I think to answer Cy's question, it needs to be about the percentage. So what I would want to see is a shift in percentage, because that stuff does get taught. I think most instructors do have something in there. It's so it's not something specific, but it's a balance. The more we move towards real life skills, so doing that, Fiona Taylor's getaway driver lesson, where you slam the door shouting "Go, go, go" while you've got stockings on your head. Not everyone has to take it to the nth degree like that, but that kind of approach where it's not test focused. So I want to see that seesaw slide. Seesaw slide? That's a cross metaphor.
Seesaw. You want to see the seesaw?
I just want to see it, see or saw, whichever it's. Cy's questions about the seesaw.
You want to see seesaw, see or saw?
Why didn't I say that?
I don't know why I said it. Yeah, I like that, and I think you're right. I'm not going to give specific examples for the reason I said before, but I just think adding anything in is better than nothing, and I don't necessarily think you can get too obscure. I think anything that works for the students. And do you know what? One thing I will say, actually, I do think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but I'm going to mention it again. Is sometimes asking them on a first lesson, and yeah, I nudge them a little bit with these, but how will you know when you can drive by yourself? And they'll say, oh, well, whatever. And I say, okay, where would you want to drive to? And they'll say Manchester or whatever. Okay. So if you could drive to Manchester and back without me helping, yeah, I'll be ready. Okay, cool. That's going to be your last lesson before you test. Well, maybe not the last, but you get my point. So there's things you can add in there, and I think adding anything in would be good. And do you know what? Try it. Try somewhere. And if it don't work, don't do it again. Or, as my dad says, try it twice, because the first time might be an anomaly. And then the second time, if it don't work, don't do it again. That's why my dad's got 2 kids. So I'm going to move on to the next question, which I believe is from Chris Keogh, and I think I'm getting his surname right when I say that. Could be wrong. Apologies if I'm getting it wrong. So Chris's first question: what are the top ways to look after yourself in this job, especially if you are struggling or feeling down? Now, Chris is a member of the Instructor Premium. For anyone listening, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. And I would suggest the first thing you want to do as a member of the Instructor Premium is head over to First ADI with Emma Cottington and go and check out those episodes because she's awesome. We plugged her enough today, I think, so let's leave it there. But awesome stuff over there, and that's a really good place to start. But what I would say with this, if you're feeling down, is to do what's right for you because everyone's going to be different. And I think there's a lot of generic advice about go for a walk, and yes, these stuff will help probably more people than not, but you need to find out what works for you. So me being a massive introvert, I often need to be alone. It needs to be, right, this is my flat, my door's shut, the world can just bugger off. The world can just go away. I'm going to sit on my sofa and switch my phone off, and that's what I need for tonight. Sometimes it'll be throwing myself a pity party and allowing myself to sulk with a Papa John's or whatever. Other times it's reaching out to someone. So in terms of looking after yourself, if you're struggling, I think that's it. I think it's doing the things that need for you, but then there's also the preventative bit. So I think I might be touching on a further question when I say it, but I'm going to anyway. It's doing the preventative bit and looking at your structure. I spoke about me managing my time earlier. Now, for me, I love my time between lessons. That makes me enjoy my days more. Having that little bit of time between lessons, it's not a comfort break or anything like that. I'll enjoy that time. So therefore, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to do my car park yoga. I'm going to listen to something in my headphones and unwind and then go to the next lesson. Other people prefer to get those lessons over and done with and then go home and enjoy their time there. And neither's right or wrong. It's what's right for individuals. So there's preventative stuff, and I think then there's stuff to help as well. So, and the ADI walk back as well would help. Anything you want to add to that, Chris?
I think the ADI walkback's a nice example because the reason it started was about talking to someone, or having the opportunity to. It's not necessarily. Sometimes you don't want to, but having someone there. I've got a number of people that and Terry's one of them. He knows that if I have an issue, I'll reach out to because I value their opinion and I don't have to take the opinion. I love that. I normally do. I normally take the advice. I take the opinion and I benefit from it. But it's a relationship in which there is no expectation for me to do so, and I can ignore them and still do what I think. And I think trying to find those people, one of the biggest issues from a driving instructor perspective is the lonely bit of the job. So try to find those people that you can meet for a coffee for once a month or organize your own ADI walk back locally. Get in touch if you want details. And you can then have a regular meeting point where if you need to, or at the moment that you need to, you can raise the flag and say help. And I think especially, say in the job, but also as a bloke, blokes are crap at it. And will normally only ask once, if at all. So you need the opportunities there for when you do ask. So, I say that as someone that's been there, done it and got the T-shirt. So unfortunately, the structure is too often not one of actually providing the help that you need at the moment that you need it. On the other side of it, keep your ears open because it's not just you. There's going to be other people that have those times as well. And you're in a position to be the support that they need. And if we all do that, the whole world becomes a better place. Hence, ADI walk back, and the reason that I will happily turn up in the rain in the woods and stand there on my own, if no one arrives that month, because I know it's there if people need it. I then get a flat battery and have to get my dad to come and bail me out with a jump start, but I didn't tell anyone that story, so
Instructor podcast exclusive there. But no, I think you're right, and I think the other thing I would say, I think we've kind of touched on this, is look after yourself. So like you were kind of specifically asking around, I did say looking after yourself, but in the job, but if you look after yourself, it's a lot easier to look after yourself in the job. So you are your business when you're an independent driving instructor. It's slightly different if you're running a franchise or anything like that, but if you're the driving instructor, you are your business, so you need to look after you. So on the days where you are not fit to drive, on the days where you are genuinely struggling, don't be afraid to give yourself a day off, because you are then looking after your business. On the days when you can go and work, go and work. You know, look after yourself, prioritize you, and you know, if you can do it today where you can, because you might not be able to tomorrow. So let's move on to the next question, because I think it kind of ties in a little bit, actually. So these all questions from Chris Kill at the minute. I'll let you come in with this one first, Chris. What is the danger of comparing ourselves to others, especially if we see multiple passes and we've had a few fails?
You're not comparing yourself to others. You're comparing yourself to what you see at that moment in time and what they choose to portray. And everyone looks the same naked. So in but in the cold, Terry's shaking his head frantically.
I've seen that we don't. There, I can vouch for that.
But it's that thing of especially in the modern world of social media, people generally portray either themselves at their best or their worst, and not the bits in between. And there's reasons for it. I've also been doing this long enough that I've seen that with pass rate, it goes up and down. And sometimes it's not what you're doing or what you're not doing. Sometimes it just is. And you might have taken your eye off the ball. It might be that the worst thing you can do is have a whole run of passes, because that starts to chase you, and you end up dreading it. And the best thing you get is a fail. Just burst that bubble so you can relax again. But yeah, don't assume that that is how the world is. What I would suggest you do is get your stats from the DVSA, because they can tell people a lot. If you don't understand them, get in touch with me. I love looking at those, what used to be a crystal report. Don't know what they call it now. The ADI stats. You can get it on their website. It's so easy to get. And if everyone does it at once, it won't work. But generally speaking, it's like a couple of hours and it comes through. It's pretty efficient. They clearly need to have more work. So no, but it's great. It's a brilliant system, and I love the fact it's so easy now. So get those stats through and have a look at it objectively. Ask someone else to have a look at it objectively, and go, where are the issues that are showing on my tests, and what could I maybe do to try and address those? Because if you're that worried about that pass rate and everything else, that's where to start. But it's the lens that you look at things through, or try and find someone who's having a worse time than you, and then you'll feel better.
I could be wrong when I say this, but I would hazard a guess, if I looked up Chris Keogh's driving school social media, I would see pass and then another pass and a string of passes, because generally we don't publicise his fails. So it's really easy to see these people with a string of passes, and you can't really prove it wrong unless you go and ask them. So, as you said, we don't know what it is we've seen. We're only seeing like the tip of the iceberg, if you like. And also, there's just I think there's massive context to this stuff. So I'm going to give a very specific story here that was last year. I'm not going to name them, but you can find it online. It was a public thing where I think I was asking about, what's your day like today? And I'd put my day, and there were a load of podcast stuff on there. And someone responded and said, I'm out with a family today, I'm out with a wife, and I'm well behind on my podcast stuff. It's really embarrassing. I can't keep up with you, Terry. I actually took a bit of offense, maybe not offense, but I took it badly. And I reached out and I said, look, you're saying you're not as good as me. Well, there's two ways to look at this, because I'm a lonely old man in a flat. Now, that's a slight exaggeration, but at the time, I'm a lonely old man in a flat. So there's two ways to look at this. You could say, I'm better at, work ethic and podcasting than you are. But you could also say that you're better with family and a wife than me. And neither are necessarily true, but there's just two sides of the same coin. So you're only seeing one side. You're not seeing everything else that's going on. You don't know where that other person is struggling. you could see that person's entire life and go, I'm not swapping with them. No
Yep.
chance. You never know what's going on with someone because you never see it. And that ties into what we were saying before about reaching out to someone. Often it's those people that are posting the success stuff that are struggling the most. It's like when what does it say? When you turn up and there's been an accident, you don't go to the people that are screaming, you go to the ones that are quiet. Because if they're screaming, they're probably okay because they're just in pain. The ones that are quiet are the ones that want to check on. It's that similar thing when you see someone that's being quiet or that's just posting past pictures, or all of a sudden their social media goes a bit off. That's when you want to check on them. So we're always going to compare. It's human nature. And it can be a positive. I do it sometimes. I'll compare and I'll go, oh, I need to step my game up because that person stepped the game up. And if I want to continue doing this, I need to do this. There's ways to make it work. But generally, I think, what is it they say? Comparison is the thief of joy.
Do they?
Mm.
I haven't heard that one before.
Oh, it's mine. I'll claim
Okay.
that then. Yeah. If you haven't heard it, it must be mine. Not giving anyone else credit. Comparison is the thief of joy, Chris. There you go. Let's move on to Chris, the other Chris with a K's. Next question. Is the CPD market becoming overloaded, and how would a PDI know who to go to or who offers the best product for them? I am answering this question at 10 to 9. My filter goes at 8:30. Yes, potentially it is becoming overloaded, in my opinion. However, this year I released 2 new podcasts. I released one on the 1st of January called the 1 Minute ADI Tips, and I released one a couple of months ago called Driving Instructors to Vision Zero. So if we are flooding the development and training market, then I am guilty of that as well. However, the difference being the 1 Minute ADI podcast tip is filling a gap. It is unique. It is literally tips for driving instructors under 2 minutes. Something you can pretty much guarantee you can listen to between lessons. There is nothing else like that out there. I think there's currently 36. You could probably listen to half of them in between one lesson. And it's designed so that you can go, oh, that's a good one. I like that. I'll take note of that. You maybe listen to the next 3 and you go, yeah, not for me. Oh, but no, that's good. They're not all going to be for you. It was kind of created just to give people a bit of an idea and something to do between lessons, if you like. And it's been really successful. Driving Instructors Division Zero was, bridging that gap between driving instructors and the road safety sector, giving ADIs and PDIs relevance as much as possible. Should really do that when I say that. Relevant information and inspiration from the road safety sector. And do you know what? A little plug. It's actually out on the 1st every month. So this goes out on the last day of August. Don't know what date that is. But tomorrow it will be the Driving Instructor Vision Zero podcast. It's with Dr. Ian Greenwood, who is talking to me about the politics of road death, but also why he got into this. Well, fortunately, there's another person that got into it because his daughter died in a crash. Horrific car crash, lost his daughter, and he tells that story as well. Check that out. It's a fascinating episode. Language and politics, road death, all that kind of stuff. And Ollie Taylor from The Honest Truth is also going to be joining me every episode now going forward to give us his final thoughts at the end of every episode. So some really cool stuff going on over there. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because I brought out this additional training. But there's a purpose to it. It's something different. So is the market becoming flooded? Yes, it is. Is it a problem? Potentially. Because it depends what you're after. We need to make sure the quality is there and not just the quantity. And to touch on the last bit before I let you chip in, Chris, and I'm sure I'll have more to say after because I've done a big old rant here. How do PDIs find it? Where do PDIs start? Go for the free stuff to begin with. So the Instructor podcast, if you like this and you find this sort of stuff beneficial, go and check out the premium content because guess what? You'll like that even more. If you don't like it, then don't find something else or check out the 3 weeks trial for it or whatever bracket that fits into for whatever anyone else is doing. But find the taster, find the free version of what people are doing and then find what you like from that will be my suggestion of where to start. So Chris, is the CDP market or CPD market, is the training and development market becoming flooded and where should PDIs or ADIs find their training?
I hate this question. Not because it's a bad question at all, and it's an incredibly good question. I don't know. I think the biggest issue we've got, we need CPD. We need good stuff out there. That I think the problem stems from every instructor is the best instructor in their car. And that's the world that we live in, where everyone's equal as instructors. And we see it with learners. And I think this is relevant. We see it with learners where my instructor was awesome. Now, you know that instructor and you know they're not awesome. That, they're the one that you pick up loads of work from, especially after their pupils pass the test, because they're just getting to that standard and they haven't got the confidence or ability that you would want them to have. But on the surface of everything, the public view is that everybody's awesome. I think that's the problem with the CPD. I'm not bothered about quantity. Look at self-help books. There's tons of them out there, and there continue to be more being written. How much help do we actually need? And none of them have solved the problem. There's no magic pill, because then everything bursts. If we had really good training and structured training on the entry into the industry, I think that would shake up CPD, because actually people would come in with a level of understanding. The problem is people are relying on that CPD, which in a way should come after the training, but it doesn't. It's being used at the same time. It's in parallel with, or it's to top up the gaps that have been left. So that leaves us in a really difficult situation. My biggest concern is the lack of credibility that you need to be able to deliver CPD. I could, just decide to do something tomorrow and that's it, so let's take a PDI, badge or no badge, would take a PDI coming in and saying, right, I'm going to do a course on that. But there's nothing to say they shouldn't. And we all come from a background of prior experience and education. They might be really, really good at it. And I've seen it happen. We've had PDIs that are training other PDIs happening in the industry. And, I think that's the thing. I think what we need is some kind of structure in there that says, yes, you can deliver these things, but you've got to have kind of earned your stripes along the way. But then I kind of think, why? If it's good, it's good. I think sometimes people don't appreciate what good is. Like this is why I was referring to learners. That they'll go on a Zoom call with someone who knows the next page of the book or the same page of the book, but actually they don't understand it. That can be dangerous. It can really cause some problems. And that's where we get the myths that the whole industry seems to be built on. I think I'm too close to it. I had a conversation earlier today which really made me kind of appreciate my position. I never really see myself as a trainer. I never liked the badge of trainer. Some big name trainers that everyone would know their names have told me that I'm not a trainer on occasion, because I don't do it as like a full-time thing. I do it kind of quietly. I'm a really good or badly well-kept secret, that people get in touch and they come and do some training with me, and then they're always saying, "Oh, I didn't know you did that." I do when people are looking for it. So I decided I'm like the A-team. I thought you'd appreciate my 80s TV parallel. That it's if you need me enough, you'll come and find me. If you don't need me enough, I probably I'll help if you ask, but I like what I'm doing. I'm kind of happy there. So I don't know, I'm not in a good position to then judge. I really struggle with that. And I think we need more good quality CPD. I don't think we're there yet. I think we've got too much, and you touched on it, Terry, the too much entry level, because everyone's trying to prove themselves. So it is that, there's all of that entry level stuff, the stuff that we're kind of happy to give away for free. And The problem is a lot of that CPD stops there at that level. There's not the depth of stuff behind it. If you want the other extreme, go and do Lisa Dawn's course at Crampfield, which is epic because it's an academic course. It's really, really good. I loved it. I learnt loads. I walked out of the door and I didn't have a clue how to put that into practice and change how it was going to change my instructing world, how it was going to benefit my pupil. I knew more. I was more academically informed. But we don't deal with that. What we need is a plug and play solution, isn't it? We have a pupil with a problem. We want that thing. We're almost in the same world as my eldest son's generation, where if you have a problem, you go and see what your friends are doing on TikTok because they'll have solved it. And we're guilty of that same kind of thing of going, I don't care about why, I just care what's going to work. I don't want to have mechanical understanding of the process. I don't want to know what the problem is behind it. And maybe that's okay. I don't like it because it's not who I am. I like knowing the ins and outs of it. But maybe that's absolutely okay, because we shouldn't, to quote a lot of people out there, not the majority, but a lot of people out there, we shouldn't, make it into rocket science, because it's not. It's simple. Well, firstly, rocket science isn't a thing. It's rocket engineering. So get it right. But it is, sometimes we do overcomplicate it. But if you go to your doctor, you want them to understand all of that information and just tell you if it's going to hurt or not. I don't know. Going back to my initial answer.
I'm just trying to think desperately. Is it you have a problem and no one can solve it? That's the A-Team theme tune, isn't it? Yes, there you go.
Yes.
And yes, Fiona making I think calling you the Equalizer. Is it Denzel that was in the most recent trilogy for the Equalizer? Is it Denzel Washington? Either way, phenomenal trilogy of films, by the way. Absolutely stonking. Get them watched. Yes, what you said, Chris. I don't think that the problem is at the end, too many people stop at that entry level training, and there's now, in my opinion, too many people offering entry level training as if that's all you need to know, and it kind of is all you need to know. That's the problem. It's the all you need to know. Sorry, I'm laughing at the chat here because Les Hopkins says yes, which means it is Denzel. But then Fiona's saying Robert Woodward's your young pup. I did used to watch actually when I was on holiday in the caravan, but no, Denzel. Either way, yes, there's too much bog standard training, and then the acceptance and promotion that this is all you need to do. And I just think surely we're getting beyond that. Surely we're getting past that to the point now where this matters. It matters. It's the point where people die on roads every day, and we can help prevent that, and we're not doing enough. And when I say we, I include me in that, because as long as I can do more, I'm not doing enough. Now, that doesn't mean I have to do more every single day. It's not like that. It just means it's where we're looking. Because I think part of the problem is people that, I realise the irony of me saying this, people that are potentially intentionally becoming celebrity trainers. If you like, look at me, I'm famous, aren't I awesome? Famous trainers. There are people coming into this industry with that goal. And the easiest way to get that is to tell someone how to pass a standards check or a part 3. And it's just frustrating because I will use the premium. This isn't me promoting the premium. It's just an example of this. One of the saddest things for me is when someone qualifies as a part 3 that is a member of the Instructor Podcast Premium and then leaves the following week. And it's the saddest thing because A, you're in the wrong place if you're looking to, use the instructor premium to qualify you part 3, because yes, it'll help you, but there's places that will help you better than the instructor podcast premium. That's not what it's about. It'll help you, but we're raising standards, not just like getting you through the basics. But the other sad thing is, well, I've qualified now. That's me done. Now, there has been a couple of people that have left and said, I'm taking a break. That's fine for me. That's completely different. But and again, it's not just me. I know this happens in other areas as well, but it's that leaving and just stopping and giving up. And everyone needs a break. But I've qualified now. I'm done.
Yes, I think you're right. We see it in lots of different areas. I'm wondering if all of this is a symptom of the minimum standards thing, that until there's a requirement for more, because there isn't a requirement for any of it, really, all we're required to do is produce someone who passes the driving test. That's it. Until there's a requirement for more, we're not. You only do CPD, the good stuff, the stuff that that you should be at the level of needing, not the stuff where you're actually below the level of. It's an opt-in, and it's you do it because you might do it because it benefits your business, but the business and the training are often very separate, aren't they? So most people could get by. There's some people that wouldn't ever need training. You could actually get through and qualify without anything. I was with the person I was talking today was an ex-teacher, and is now a business coach. And I said to her that, all right, there's some technical stuff that having done a mini mock on theory with her, and she failed, that I would, that I probably need to help her with a bit with the theory. Her driving's probably quite good from the sound of things. She's fairly conscientious, so a little bit of a polish on that's not an issue. Actually, when it comes to the important stuff as an instructor, the part 3, she could probably just walk in and do it, as long as she knows that there needs to be a goal, that you need to have the roles in place, and then just teach a good lesson, have good feedback at the end. All of those requirements are very basic. So it's only when you go over and above. And as you said, the majority of training that's flooding things is based on the minimum stuff. But, to quote Lou Walsh, she would have loved to have delivered training that was nothing to do with the standards check or nothing to do with the part 3. But that's what people turned up for. It was not what they were given when they got there. And I think there's a lot of people that, that end up having to take that approach, and they try to deliver some fairy dust in amongst the possibly slightly mundane and boring stuff.
I think I've said this before, and I'm going to caveat this by saying you're a different trainer to most. You touched on this yourself earlier. You don't do it in the traditional sense, if you like. And I've experienced that firsthand. I've come to you for a little bit, and obviously I know you well, and we talk quite a lot. So I unfortunately know how your brain works, but I like to use Bob Morton as an example because I think he works better in this example.
Mm-hmm.
As a trainer, not you, Chris, generally, sort of question to the masses. As a trainer, are you as good as Bob Morton? No. Then why should I come to you? You need to offer, if you're not as good as Bob Morton at training me to be a driving instructor, you need to offer me something different to Bob Morton.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you're as good of a trainer in that type of sense as Bob Morton, because you offer something different. So I can't compare you both. I think Bob Morton, and I hope he takes this in the correct way, is more of a standard trainer, not standard track trainer, but you know what I mean, more of a standard trainer, and you go, actually, this looks more fun. And so you offer something different, and that's another one of my issues. It's that if you're not as good as this person, then why should I come to you? Phil Hurst is the prominent standards check trainer in Yorkshire. If I ask anyone in Yorkshire, they will say Phil Hurst. So why would I go to anyone else apart from Phil Hurst for standards check training? I just wouldn't bother. What's the point? Why would I go to someone that's third or fourth or fifth best when I can go to Phil? You know, or if you offer something different, you know, and as you do, as I do, I don't do standards check training. I offer all this shit that I do. That it's that, and I want to touch on a couple of comments here that Les Hopkinson said. He said, how to pass a standards check or a Part 3 courses are the equivalent of us teaching to pass the driving test. I just want to chip in with that before I read the next one, then I'll let you wrap up, Chris. That I don't think there's anything wrong with standards check courses. I feel like I probably jump on the back of a bit too much. Like you said, we need to know, or at least in my opinion, we need to know something of this, something around the basics to then build on the basics. So I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but there has to be a follow-on. There has to be an encouragement. There has to be right, now you know this, now you know how to do the basics of teaching someone to drive or helping someone learn to drive, or we want to phrase it. You can now move on to this thing and then this thing. And why don't you explore this? It needs to expand. And then Les also said, but Bob has a niche being coaching and Chris's niche is theory. So they can't be compared. It depends on what you want or need. I would slightly argue with Chris's niche being theory. It is, but not regards to training. Yeah, I agree. Anything you want to touch on that, Chris?
I think Les makes a really good point, but it's not the one that he was making. It also goes back to what Chris was saying about when you see everyone else with passes and you're not getting them. It's what we choose to put out there. And some people are better at that, the publicity, than others. There's some really good trainers out there that do not deliver really good publicity, self-promotion and such. So they don't get noted. There's some that are not so good, but are really good at making it look like they're really good. And developing that. And what you want is a bit of both, isn't it? It's the same with instructors. It is no different. The fact that, as I say, Les says about myself and the theory, that's self-invented. I decided to go down the theory route and to specialize in that. But I'm also an audit trainer and I provide, Part 3 training. I train instructors. I do all of that stuff. It's not what I shout about because I don't really like being a trainer. And I know I'm good at it. It's not saying I'm not. I just don't get a buzz out of it. I like problems, shiny problems, and at the moment the shiny problem is the theory, and I'm really enjoying that. So it goes to that thing of it's what we portray, and Bob is really good at portraying Bob, and what we see, and he does it so naturally as well that what you see is Bob. Absolutely, and it works really well. And he's straight talking, and that's part of his gimmick, if you like. The sales patter is all of those things, and the experience that goes behind it, and everything else. And he's 3 times as old as all of us put together. So he keeps retiring and then not going anywhere, and all of those things that we joke about. I genuinely think he's awesome, and he knows. I hope that every time we have a dig in his direction, because he has plenty coming back in the other direction. That Grizzly Adams was the most recent one. I do read these things. That he does it incredibly well. I think it's that thing of you need a bit of both, and it goes back to something that I was told when I first came into the industry, when grading was 4, 5, 6. They were the passes. Anything lower than that was a fail. 6 being the highest, just for anyone that doesn't predate that change. That you need to be a grade 6 instructor with a grade 4 personality, which is to have the technical knowledge of someone who is achieving the grade 6, because that's what it was really showing. But someone who didn't have that technical knowledge but was running a really good driving school because they were a nice person, they had the people skills. And having the balance of the two is actually where the success was, and that's what we wanted to achieve. So if you can get that kind of image out there, if I am very appreciative of people's engagement with me as a theory trainer, because just as many people turn around and go, "It's not a thing." It needs to be a thing. But the fact that when a theory post comes up on Facebook, that I'm now pretty much guaranteed to get tagged in that thread, a lot of that is hard work. A lot of that is making sure that I'm putting the right stuff out there and engaging with the right people. And it's also the back of 15, nearly 16 years, I think, of me being on Facebook, in the center of the driving instructor world on Facebook. Talk to the instructors not on Facebook, still probably don't know who I am, haven't heard of me. It's fine. I want them to hear about me because I want to make a difference. It genuinely isn't an ego thing from my perspective. I want to actually make some change. If someone else, decides to take up the mantle for that, I support them. So I think that's it, if people are genuine and honest, and that's what you can represent, then they're not scared of questions, they're not scared of challenges. They're the ones that that you probably want to listen to, that you have that conversation with them. And to link it with the conversation I had earlier, which was, how do I choose a driving instructor for my kids? How do I find the good one? My answer was, the best question you can ask is ask which test routes they're going to get taught, and anyone that says which test routes, don't go with them.
It's probably too long since you mentioned the part 3 to me. Part 3 for me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I failed my first attempt at part 3, a 1 and a 2, and I passed my second with a 5 and a 6. That's how you improve. Yeah, all those things. Bob sent me a message recently that genuinely made me well up a little bit. He sent me a message, just said it found something from when he first appeared on the podcast, and he sent me this lovely message just saying thank you, because he thinks, or he attributes him being on the podcast to a lot of his growth and prominence in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's rare I get people reaching out to tell me that. I think a lot of people don't realize that. You're someone that does and acknowledges it. And you were well known before me, Chris, but you're someone that will thank me for this stuff. And it was just, I don't know, just out of the blue, and it made me well up. But then he sent me a video of me at around that time when I was about 40 pounds lighter, and I hated him for it. But either way, I've just had a look at the next question, and I have no idea what the answer is. So that tells me that we should probably wrap up and finish these on the next episode. So, Christ Bensteed / aka Grizzly Adams, aka the Master and Ruler of the World. Do you want to just remind everyone? I'll say who you are. Just tell everyone who you are. Just remind everyone where you can find you.
There used to be a guy on the radio when I was growing up. He was awesome, and I wish it had come back. He's probably dead now. Who never used to give out the contact details for the show. And I'm being the A team, I'm kind of feeling like I shouldn't. But I'm in business and I will. So find me at the DITC. If you have any driving instructor issues, the DITC, theditc.co.uk. And I will send you to Terry to solve them, or someone else if there's someone better. And if you have theory issues, then Theory Test Explained. I'm slowly getting some bits on the website. If anyone wants to read my new page about neurodiversity, it's not brilliant, but I got a page on the website. I was very excited. Check it out on theorytestexplained.co.uk, or find me on Facebook.
And I never have rarely have my Instructor Podcast logo on Zoom. When I make the videos, I do that slightly different. I've got to fill the page because I don't just want two massive faces on the page. Not an intentional dig at anyone. Clearly, not intentional dig. I don't want two massive faces on the page. I need to make it look pretty. But when I do my Zoom, unlike some people have the massive logo next to the head, I never have it there. If people want to find me, I'm easy to find. Search for the Instructor Podcast. And if you want to make it even easier, www.theinstructorpodcast.com. It looks like you want to say something, Chris, before you wrap up.
I just know that you like to ridicule me by finding little snippets of these things and putting them out there in social media, because you know that I won't argue. So if you're going to make me look stupid, they might as well know how to find me looking stupid. So yeah, if you're looking for stupid, get in touch.
Or you can place like your little Instructor Podcast mug back there. Or I think there's a book over there called How to Look After Your Penis. But either way, Big thank you for joining me today, Chris, as always. And a big thank you for the lovely premium interactive members that have come along, and to Susan Bates who have come along to start off the show in such a wonderful fashion. And it's been all downhill since then.
The Instructor podcast with Terry Cook, talking with leaders, innovators, experts and game changers about what drives them.